we are going to set up all the ads and launch a full Facebook ads campaign. This is the ending portion of a longer Facebook ads training I did on YouTube. At the end of this tutorial, I'll link to that full training. The first 55 minutes is going to be brand new content. So let's talk about the 3 different campaigns that we're going to create and the way we're going to structure them. So the very first one is going to be to brand new people who have not heard of us before. And we're just going to do a very, very broad audience and take our 4 ads and show it to everyone in that audience. And throughout the day, I have this representing how much it's spending on each ad. So it'll start off spending pretty equally between ads. But as we're getting sales or leads or things like that throughout the day, it'll start diverting more and more spend to the thing that's generating sales and the thing that's working. So you can see in this one, it didn't actually generate any sales. So it really stopped spending money on that ad and put that money toward this one. So if it was $100 for the day, this one would have got nearly half of our spend, and this one would have got just 10% or something like that, even though it's 1 out of 4 ads. So our second campaign is also to cold traffic, also to brand new audiences. And this one's based off interests. So I'll get into setting them up exactly, but we're doing like fitness and wellness, protein bars, yoga, and we're using the same 4 ads to reach new people. So this way we can kind of see, oh, ad 3 worked really, really well with this audience. But since we have the same ads across the campaigns, we can really put enough spend into them to know whether they worked or not. And we can also say, oh man, ad 4 worked really, really well across all audiences. So we can kind of check that off as one of our best ads that we can use over and over going forward. We also have like a video, which is going to be important for retargeting, because when we do our warm and hot audiences, we're going to say, okay, people who watch 50% of this video get added to that warm audience. The warm audience is like people who are familiar with us or visited a page or engaged on Facebook or things like that. And it's actually going to go through the same thing in each audience and ad set, where it diverts the spend to what's working really, really well. So this will happen across all 3 campaigns. So our third and final audience is warm and hot traffic. So these are people who are already familiar with us, with our product, and we're just trying to get them to complete their purchase. So often with bigger campaigns, I will do a separate warm and hot audience campaigns. But for this one, we have hot audience, people who have visited the website and spent a decent amount of time on the page. If we had lower traffic, I'd probably just do all website visitors. But this one will say there's a decent amount of traffic. We're doing people who spent a lot of time in the last 30 days, in the last 31 to 180 days, and then people who visited a very specific page. So we have our top seller in this example is peanut butter protein waffles. So people who land on that page, we're showing them very specific ads that try to get them back on that page to finish. And these are different ads from our cold traffic campaigns, just so there's some variety, and we're really adding people from our cold traffic to our warm traffic when they're watching videos and engaging with ads. So now they'll be able to see a variety of different ads and not get burned out seeing the same thing over and over. And these are also a little more customized toward people who are already familiar with our brand, trying to kind of push them over the edge to actually make a purchase. Do you want to become really good at Facebook ads? I actually created a completely free 18-day course. You'll get an email every day with a new lesson. The link to that is down below. And a lot of the lessons are from my YouTube channel, but include extra commentary and resources and PDFs and guides. And there's actually 3 videos that are not available anywhere else but in that course. So that's the only place you can find them. The link again to that is down below. Jumping back over to Facebook, I'm going to click Create to start setting up the campaign. You definitely need a Facebook pixel properly set up before going any further. I'll have a card pop up top. You can watch that video and come right back here, because if you don't have it set up, it's not going to be able to track your purchases. So it can't actually optimize to showing it to the right people. You'll have no idea if your ads are working correctly. So that video covers everything on installing a Facebook pixel. So as soon as you open up, you have a lot of campaign objectives: brand awareness, reach, traffic, engagement, app install. 95% of the time, I optimize for conversions because that is what I want people to do. I want them to actually buy. So even if I have like a training video or something, or send them to an informational article where I just want people to click the link and go to that page, you'd think, oh, you're going to use like traffic or video views for that. Not always, because I wanted to target people who are the most likely to buy. Because what's the reason I'm showing them a training video? Or what's the reason I'm sending traffic to an information page? Because I want to follow up with them and then I want them to buy. Even if I'm getting them on an email list and sending a series of emails and then pitching them a product, I want it to specifically find people who are more likely to spend money. I just know so many people who've built up leads or things like this where all of these things, they're just doing traffic, and it is actively looking for people who are cheap traffic but are not going to buy, and it just converts horribly. So if you're doing lead generation, I generally recommend that you use conversions, because that is for tracking leads and purchases on your website. Lead generation here is collecting leads through Facebook, and while they're really inexpensive, I've also found them to be fairly low quality. So previewing what we'll do in the next step, under conversion event, we can select purchase, but we can also select an event like lead as well. I'll show you how I have things set up on my website. Here's that 18-day ads course. So I am tracking view content specifically for people who hit this page, and then once they enter in their email, it will take them to a thank you page, and as soon as they reach this page, it is tracking them as a lead. I do want to say that campaign objective is a lot more important if you have a huge audience, because it's going to look through that giant audience and try to find the people who are most likely to make a purchase. So it's not going to show it to the vast majority. If you have a relatively small audience like website visitors, it's really going to just show it to every single person in that audience. So it's not going to need to pick and choose who to show it to based off that campaign objective. So when we do our warm and hot traffic campaign later, we can either do purchases or impressions, because at that point the goal is just to get it in front of every person in that audience. I haven't found it makes a big difference, so we're just going to stick with purchases when we set that up. You can put a total spending limit. I generally only do this, let's say if it's like a weekend promotion or something like that, and it's like, hey, we have $600 marketing dollars to put toward this weekend sale, you can do that there. A/B test. This can be good to split test, but I actually do the split testing in Ads Manager, so I always ignore A/B test. Campaign budget optimization. So it says campaign budget will distribute your budget across ad sets to get better results. So you can turn that on or off. I will generally turn it on. You know, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars of data, and I've found that my CBO campaigns tend to do better. I'll be explaining a few concepts with custom graphics, so just leave your setup where it's at, and I'll jump right back in a second. So what is ABO versus CBO? So ABO is ad budget optimization, and CBO is campaign budget optimization. So you have the overall budget for your campaign. Let's say this time it's $100 per day. With ABO, you'll actually select how much money each of these audiences and ad sets is going to get. So you can set them at whatever you want. In this example, we'll say, hey, I want you to split them equally so each one gets equal spend. And if you remember, the ones that perform best and generate the most sales get the most spend. So in this example, we set it at 100. It's spending equally amongst all these three. And this one gets $17 because it did really well. Now look at campaign budget optimization. So rather than you selecting the budget for each audience or ad set individually, it's kind of going to do the same thing where it says, okay, this audience is doing really, really well. I'm going to divert more and more of that $100 toward this one because it's generating the most sales. In this example, it diverted half the spend to this one because it did better, and then half of that spend to the top performing ad. So this one ad got a quarter of our spend. And then, the worst performing one here may get like $3 or $4 of spend. So when I use ABO, it's normally when I have a really small audience and I just want a little bit more control over how much I'm putting toward that audience and how often people see it. If this is a really small audience, let's say it's 400 people, in this example, it'll cost $8 to reach the full audience. I can be reaching people several times if I'm spending $3 a day. Well, if I'm just leaving it up to CBO and it's kind of splitting it to what's doing best, this is a really good audience. It's small, but it's amazing. And I just wouldn't want it to start spending like $10 a day on this one, because then that would just mean it shows it to people over and over and over. So I actually know how big of an audience size I have. It's very, very small. And I know how many times I want the audience to see it. And that's why I'm going to use ABO and actually set the budget individually, so that each of these, it shows an ad to people in these audience maybe like 3, 4, 5 times a week. Let's jump back into Facebook. So we've got CBO turned on. So then we can choose the daily budget. So this is for the full campaign. So with this, we've got, $1,500 to spend over a week or so. So we have our 3 total campaigns. I'm gonna probably spend a pretty equal amount with each campaign. You'll remember that we talked through this strategy earlier in the video. Here's the time code if you need to go back for a review. Yeah, let me do $75 a day for this campaign, and we'll set that for the various campaigns. Campaign bid strategy. So let's talk the different bid strategies. The default and definitely the simplest and easiest is lowest cost. And that's what we're going to use here, but you definitely want to know about the other types of bids and things like that. Not only so you can use it in the future, but also this is going to teach you a lot about how the Facebook ad platform works. So there's constant auctions going on, people who are less expensive to get in front of or are pretty likely to make a purchase without spending a whole lot of money. So let's say your budget for the day is like $150. So it's going to kind of work its way through the cheaper auctions until it's hit like $150. So it's definitely going to spend right around $150, enter these auctions, and since your spend is a little low, it's going to ignore these up here. Whereas if your budget's like $1,000 a day, it has to show it to every single person in this audience to hit your spend. And that's often why it'll cost a little more when you're spending a whole lot. Some of those people may be really competitive to get in front of or to get to buy. But next up we have target cost. I don't really use this one a whole lot, but now we're getting into manual bids where you're actually going to set an exact amount that you're going to bid. So usually I run lowest cost first and get some idea of what I'm getting purchases for. So saying, okay, I'm pretty consistently getting them for $25. So that's going to be the target. That's where I'm profitable. So you're going to set that bid at, let's say, $25, $24, something like that. Target cost is going to really try to be like exactly acquiring a customer for $25. So it's going to bid right at 25 and then go down to like 20 and then up to 30. So I haven't used target cost in years. I just haven't found the results quite as good. And I think the other manual bids are quite a bit better. Okay, next up we have bid cap. So we're going to set the exact amount that we're willing to bid. In this example, again, we'll say it's right at $25. It could be anything. And in this example, we're actually not going to bid on any auctions that are more expensive than that, even a little bit more expensive. So it'll be right at 25. So none of these auctions above this, it's going to enter. So the benefit of this is you can really control how much you're able to pay to acquire a customer. The downside is sometimes it's very, very low volume or very, very low spend for the day. It's not actually that uncommon where there's just none of the cheap auctions at all and you spend $0 for the day. Okay, so then my favorite is cost cap. And so you're setting the manual bid and it's going to try to kind of average, if you set it at 25, it's going to try to get you purchases for 25 or less. And mostly exists under here, but it can kind of reach up into a little bit more expensive options. If it says, oh, this is a really good person to show it to, I can still keep your average amount really good. So this is kind of the best of both worlds where you're actually hitting a little bit more of your spend and reaching a little bit above when it makes sense, but you're still keeping things very, very manageable. Okay, so let's look at, so that was a day that's kind of moderately competitive. Here's a day that's really good, where there's a lot of cheap auctions to enter. So under lowest cost, suddenly, you could spend your whole $150 and not have to go into more expensive ones. So your average amount you're getting per customer for the day is going to be really good. It's going to be a really good day for you. That's on the lower spend. And then let's say you're at a lot higher, like $500 a day, you're not actually having to go to the very top because there's all these more affordable options that you can choose. And under this day for target cost, you can reach your full spend. There's a lot of different auctions for you to enter. For bid cap, you probably can reach a decent amount of spend and actually hit that because there's a lot of cheap auctions for it to enter. And then, you have even more auctions and it can hit even more spend with cost cap. But what happens if you have just an extremely competitive day where it's really expensive to get in front of people? Well, if you're under lowest cost, it's going to, have to spend your full budget. So it's going to start here and kind of work its way up. And the average amount you're spending for a purchase is going to be, way up in the $35, $40. So you'll spend the full amount, but not get very good results. If you do target cost, it can reach up here a little bit, but you're not going to get a lot of spend for the day. And, you have very limited bid cap. You'll get probably like $2 of spend for the day because you can only show it to a couple people right here. And it's not able to reach up into any of these auctions to try to get results. And then under cost cap, it can reach up a little bit into some of these auctions that are happening around here, but you're probably not going to hit your spend for the day. So here is kind of how things on average look over time. So this is lowest cost, where you're going to be spending the same amount every single day, no matter how competitive the market is. So your results, like your cost per purchase, if it's really high, that's bad. If it's low, that's really, really great. So it's really going to fluctuate the kind of results that you're getting as the market is changing. Whereas if you're bidding manually, like with cost cap, and you set it at $20, it will fluctuate definitely, but you're going to be relatively close to getting purchases for $20. But on days where it's super competitive, you're going to hit maybe nothing in spend. And then days where you can get purchases really good, there's those low auctions to enter, then you're actually going to hit the full amount of spend. So you could say, okay, I'm willing to spend $200, whereas most days you're only going to hit a fraction of that because it's basically just picking off the uncompetitive auctions and kind of working its way up to $20, and then it has to stop. So I actually like running both of these at the same time because then, I'm getting consistent sales with varying results, but then on really competitive days, I'm not losing money on the cost cap. And then on really good days, is actually going to hit its spend where I can generate twice as many sales on those days. And actually, I use automations so that my spend for the day, I'm actually based off results, scaling it up or scaling it down. So my spending looks a little bit more like this, whereas if there's a bad day, I'm going to start pausing things or turning down spend. And if it's a really good day, I will boost the spend and spend a lot more. And then I also have cost cap going at the same time. So on this day, we get a crazy amount of sales because it's super uncompetitive. We can get amazing deals like getting purchases. Whereas on this day where the purchases were terrible, I'm not spending any here, and I've really turned down the spend here. So I'm not actually losing that much money. Continuing on Facebook, we're going to choose lowest cost. Leave me a comment if you want me to do a future video on running a bid test where we test bid amounts. So ad scheduling, you can only do this with a lifetime budget. You can't do like every day. Normally, you don't need to schedule things. It would be like if there's a specific promotion that could be useful. Occasionally, like if you just could not answer phone calls over the weekend or things like that, you could use ad scheduling, but I really try to run them all the time. Okay, so now that we have all this, I'm going to properly name our campaign. So I'm going to do cold, which means brand new people who haven't heard of us. Conversion, so I'll do website conversions. I'll put that at the end. These lines just help keep it clean. I'm going to kind of name like the grouping of the campaign. So I'm going to do, let's say, interests. Then I also want to put lowest cost and CBO. And then I just find it helpful to do the date that I launched it. All right, so now we have that campaign. Let's move on. Okay, so ad set, we'll name it after we choose the different selections. So website, you want to choose your pixel. Make sure you choose the right one. And you'll choose purchase. It'll show green if you're actually already getting a lot. If you aren't currently getting a whole bunch or aren't running ads, it'll likely show up as red. So dynamic creative, should you use it? It's pretty cool for testing. I used to use it a lot and I don't really use it anymore, and I'll explain why. So basically what dynamic creative is, it takes a whole bunch of photos. You can put in photos, headlines, description, primary text, all these different things, and it'll kind of rapidly test it with different people. So it'll say, oh, let me show this photo and this headline and this description to this person. So you can kind of drill down and zero in on what's performing the best. The reason I don't like it as much anymore is once you have like a whole bunch of campaigns, you kind of have to drill down into each campaign, and it's hard to see like the overall results for different ads. It's not anywhere close to like that big old spreadsheet where you see absolutely everything. So it just became unwieldy to try to figure out across the board what was doing well. And the other big thing is, so you can keep some of the existing like comments and likes and things like that. But let's say if I just do it as a regular ad, I can then launch a new campaign and then use the existing post. And then that campaign will immediately have all of the likes, all of the comments, all of the shares, which actually can make a really big difference, especially when they're really positive comments. We talked about social proof with copywriting. If people can go through and just read all this response and stuff like that, that actually does a big job selling it for you. So you can't really keep that in the same way with dynamic creative. So that's why I've moved away. If you want to test it out, it works pretty well, but I think just manually punching it in, I find works better. Later on in the tutorial, I'll show you how to set up, use existing posts. It's an incredibly important skill to have, even if we're not going to use it in setting up this campaign. Start date, generally you want it to start immediately. You don't have to worry too much about like timing for the day or things like that. Like certain times of day do a little better, but nothing that's worth like altering this for unless you have some reason. Usually you won't have an end date. And I don't do ad spend limits. I just adjust each day. Audience. So you can create a new audience, use a saved audience. You can kind of build these over time. The custom audiences are like people who've already interacted with your business. So on this one, we'll do reaching brand new people. But when we set up like the warm and hot traffic, we're actually going to want to set them up based off, video views, Instagram, website, all that fun stuff. Let me tell you a little bit about lookalikes, because those are actually some of the most profitable audiences that I have. So lookalikes is showing it to brand new people, but it's finding the, let's say, 1% of people who are the most like your current customers or current page visitors. I generally recommend doing customer or lead. So you actually are gonna, select the pixel based off purchased. I generally, just highest value, United States. So basically it's gonna look through all 240 million people and is gonna find the 1% that are most similar to your existing audience. So the audience size is 2.4 million people, 1% of the US. You can actually do, so if you do like 10%, that'll be 24 million people. It's okay, here's the 10% that look best. So I found 1% performs really well. 10% can do pretty good. Again, Facebook kind of has its pick amongst people. So sometimes larger audience sizes are not bad. You can create a number of them. I usually just do one at a time, do it custom. So can you do a lookalike audience if you have like a brand new pixel or brand new ad account and don't have any data to pull from? Because, you know, it's trying to find preferably thousands of people who are purchasers and then create these audience based off that. Well, what you can do is if you have like a list of your customer files, you can actually upload a customer list of all your customers. And as much of these as you can give Facebook, the more likely it is to kind of match people and do a really good job. You can even put like the customer value, like how many purchases they made and things like that. But any of them you can. I can do a full tutorial on like uploading that and posting it. Even if you do have a lot of purchases and a pixel and things like that, if you do have a separate customer list, it's definitely worth including. So this will kind of walk you through the steps for creating that, because lookalikes are awesome. So this is the point that you actually upload it. So that's a cold audience that is really, really good. So for this one, we're just going to do based off like location and age. So location, if you can do the whole country, that is definitely ideal because your cost will just be a lot lower. It'll be a lot less expensive to get in front of people, and you can enter a lot of those affordable auctions. Age range. Okay, so I'm pretending like we're selling protein waffles. That applies to quite a few people. The interesting thing with Facebook ads is Facebook really likes when it has a lot of different customers and data to pull from. Like we had one where we knew that 75% of their customers were young women. That was mostly that. It was like 20% men, 80% women who bought, and then mostly younger people that bought. So we said, okay, let's just show it to young women. It'll do better. It actually did worse. Let's just show it to women. Did worse. Let's just show it to young people. Did worse. I'm not sure exactly what the Facebook algorithm or things like that, but still to this day, the men and women 18 to 65 outperforms just targeting one. That's kind of a difference with Facebook. If you're marketing and like sending out mailers and things like that, you'd want to only show it to young women because it costs money to get in front of each people. Whereas Facebook's like taking an audience of millions of people and picking, 10,000 people to show it to, the very, very best. So it's a little different. So for this, it's protein waffles, all genders. Then there is detailed targeting. So this is where you get into all the demographics, all the interests, all the behaviors. So in terms of audience size, I usually like when it's several million, maybe 10 million. Generally, if it's a smaller audience, you can add it in with other ones. So like, let's say Lutheran Church. This does not apply to waffles, but like, okay, independent, evangelical Lutheran Church. Okay. So if you're targeting that group, that'd be a good audience. You just want to include it with, several other audiences, but that could be a good one to target if that's what you're focusing on. Okay, so for the protein waffle example, let's just do fitness, people who are really health conscious into that. So 800 million people are into fitness. So that's probably a little big. That's worldwide, so it'd be smaller in the US. But let's see, I'm trying to think of something that captures like the fitness and we could do like weight loss, like fitness and wellness. You're not always going to get an exact potential reach number, especially if you do like custom audiences and stuff like that. So it's pretty broad, but I think that's a good size. We could probably just stick with that one. So you can narrow the audience by saying, okay, they need to like fitness, but they also need to like Teletubbies. We know our customers really well. They're obsessed with Teletubbies. So now it's down to 7,000 people. Even though a decent number liked it, there's just a lot less overlap. So you can narrow it down if you want to, but I'm not afraid of audiences that have millions of people, because then you can really like scale them and show them to a large percentage of the people in that audience, because 10 million people If you spend a whole lot on that audience, you go from showing it to 0.1% to 1%. There's less great people to show it to once you've shown it to like 30%, 40%, 50%. Connections, I don't really touch that. That's like warm traffic, which I just do under the custom audiences. Auto placements. So this is where your ad is shown. So you can see manual placement. You could put it like newsfeed, desktop, marketplace. I've just found auto placement just does quite a bit better on average, like 30, 40%. So I just leave it at auto placements and set up all those placements. Conversion window. So you show an ad one day and a bunch of people see it and then they click on it. And you're actually setting, okay, so if someone clicks on your ad and then 4 days later they go and make a purchase, if you're on 7-day click, 1-day view, it will then attribute that purchase to the ad on that day. So it can attribute purchases from several days prior for 7 days prior. So that's usually a good default. I often leave it on that. It kind of depends on the price point. If something's really like an impulse buy, if you do a conversion window that's like 1-day click, which is the hardest to hit, then it's really going to try to optimize for people who just see it and make a purchase right away. So sometimes impulse things, I do 1-day click, but usually the default 7-day click, 1-day view works pretty well, especially if you have something where you kind of follow up with people or show them an article or things like that. I want to have that 7-day window, and you get charged as soon as people see it. Okay, so let's go and name this thing. Okay, so I'm going to call this audience fitness and wellness. Actually need to add that to the spreadsheet so we can track it a little later. So fitness and wellness. I'll call this interests 01. And then I'll include, it was like weight loss, fitness, wellness. That was like the best description of what it was. If it was multiple things, I put a comma so I know exactly what I was targeting on it. Then I will do 18 to 65 plus. And then if it was something like Instagram viewers 30 days, I would do like 30 days, but that doesn't apply here. And then AP, automatic placements. And then 7-day click, 1-day view. And if it was like 1-day click, it would just be 1DC instead of that. Awesome. So I know it's a bit of a pain naming it, but trust me, that is going to make things so much better, easier to understand. All right, now we can actually create the ad. So we'll wait to name it until we punch everything in. But okay, we can choose the page. We can choose the Instagram account. All right, ad setup. So you have your options. You've got single image, carousel, collection. Now the bread and butter is definitely image and video. Usually like carousels, I will start testing that once I find some good images and videos. Then I can like put them all together into a carousel or things like that. But getting started, first campaign, I think you could just test images and video. That's been 90-something% of sales. You can skip over both of these. All right, and then we are going to add the media. Let's do the image. You can also set up a Facebook catalog, which can kind of dynamically display products of pages people have visited. It's better for warm and hot traffic. I will be doing a tutorial on that, but photos, videos, like I said, bread and butter. That's what makes the most money. So I'm gonna upload from the images I created earlier. Now we are going to upload the photo. So we can do this one first. Don't copy these. These were done quickly, but I did build a full made up campaign just for you and this tutorial. Okay, so square, that'll work well. It'll take a second to process. The exact resolution is less important. I tried to make it at least 1080 by 1080, but you know, it's no problem if it's a little bigger. So you can make a third version for the horizontal. They're not used in that many things. Usually I'll just either crop them, or if I can't get it to work. So you can either just have room on the sides, or sometimes I'll just, you know, zoom in on that and have it mainly be the pancake. I feel like that's the least important one. And then for this one, I can change it for the story and actually choose the story version. And don't drag it directly. You have to click upload. It's kind of annoying. Okay, cool. So we have these 3 different sizes. Photos are a little quicker doing this. So you can see a little preview, and since we set up those 3, it should look good on all of them, but you just kind of want to double check, look it over. You do have the option to turn a photo into a video. Basically, it just makes it a slideshow and zooms in on it a little bit. I don't really use this. I generally just custom design photos and videos separately. So now, primary text. So we can think about what's going to work well with it. Let's see. So gluten-free is what we're promoting. So do you want to eat healthier but don't have time? I'm going to copy that. Paste that. Headline, these are optional, but I would highly recommend them. I'm going to switch back to previewing the desktop because that's the most important. All right, so let me look at, let's see. So I feel like these are a little redundant together. Okay, we're promoting health. We could do over 1 million sold. That's also probably short enough that we get a description as well. So I usually try to make the headline a little shorter. And then let's do 12 grams of protein. We wouldn't want to do gluten-free because we mentioned it already. Okay, so then punch in the website URL. This would be to, let's say, a waffle page. But for this example, we'll just use the website. Okay, so now we actually see what it should look like. Do you want to eat healthier but don't have time? Gluten-free, over 1 million sold, 12 grams of protein. Maybe I'll add a little more context. I will just add a little bit of extra social proof. Okay, so I made it a little longer. This will also show you if it's a little longer. It may say see more. If it was a tiny bit longer, people would have to click to see more. That's actually not a terrible thing. If people are really engaged, they will click that. So URL parameters, I won't cover this too much, but basically you can add things to the link that help with tracking later. It's not essential. I do that just to get a little more data, but it's really not that key. It's a little complex to actually set up the tracking. And then, okay, you have all these different options. Typically for making a sale, I have been finding Shop Now has been performing a little bit better. But if it was like an article or a training or a video, I definitely do learn more. So let's do Shop Now. If it's in a different language, you can translate it, but if it's just the default, then that is fine. The final thing to do is actually to give it a name with the different things that we chose. So, okay, it is waffles. Let's say it's waffles yellow background. So we'll give it that name. That's the name of the creative. The code for the creative is creative photo 01. We use the first text. You don't need to include it, but just so we know that we use that primary text. Okay, so the title I gave it, waffles with the yellow background. The name of it is CRP01, the creative photo, primary text 1, headline 1, description 1, shop now. And then I'm sending people to the home page, so I can track the different pages I send people to. This could be article 1 or like a specific product like protein or things like that. So you want to make sure it says all edits saved, but then we can click close. We're going to publish everything together at the very end of the video. Things are really well organized. Cold interests. We have this ad set, and then we have this ad. So we're about to duplicate the ad, but I do want to cover how all of duplication works across Facebook ads. So you can actually duplicate a campaign or an ad set or an ad. So under the new campaign, you just hit duplicate and you can make a number of copies and that'll duplicate the entire campaign. Under the ad set, if you duplicate, this is what we're going to be doing a lot where we have all the ads and just want it to go to a new audience. So you can duplicate it within that campaign. It'll make another copy and then we can edit that audience, but keep all of the ads the same. But you can also choose existing campaign where we take this ad set and move it into another campaign. And it's very similar on the ad level. So for the ad itself, if you just duplicate and leave it the same, it'll just make another ad here that's under the same audience. But you can also choose to move it to like a different campaign and ad set. But if we switch out the campaign, we could do like cold interests. So we're moving it to that campaign, and then we can actually choose to move it to that exact ad set. So you can choose precisely where the duplicate goes. It can go into any campaign. Continuing on with the tutorial, you'll want to duplicate your ad to make a copy. You'll want to leave it as original campaign. Okay, so now we can use some of the other photos, some of the other content that we created. So we'll rename it in a minute. I'm just going to clear all the media. And then you can add a new one. So hit upload. It's super annoying. It doesn't work if you just drag it. I probably should have named these, but I didn't, so let's live with it. All right, so this one's very simple, but we are testing, okay, what happens if we have this other photo? So okay, that's good on the crop. This one we can... This one actually looks good like that. Apply. And then we can change out for our story version. If you didn't hear it earlier, you want to leave some space because they'll often put like buttons and call to actions down here. Okay, done. So I'm actually going to leave the primary text, headline, description the same for this one because I'm really testing, in this case, which waffle with this photo people like better. So it's actually a good thing to leave these the same because then I know, oh man, it wasn't that this one had a good headline and the other one is mainly just, hey, okay, which photo do people like better? So I can leave the title the same except for... we could say waffles picture 2. You can even like make a Google link so you can link to the photos themselves. CRP05. Okay, so I'm gonna call waffle picture 2 CRP05. 05. I'm going to keep it in draft again. When you duplicate it, you can do several different copies, but I usually do one at a time just to keep it simple. So I'm going to test 4 of the ads that we created with this audience, and I'll probably do the same 4 ads to the second cold audience so I can kind of see those 2 audiences compared against one another. And that way, those 4 ads, we can kind of actually put some money behind them and see how they're performing. So for this one, I am going to use the video that we created, and we created a square version as well as a story version. So I'm just going to clear everything that's in here and then go to add media and then add video. So those are in fact not pancakes, but since it's a fake campaign, we're going to roll with it. All right. So you can't drag it directly. You have to go to upload. And then I'll just drag it in there, choose open. Just like with photos, you can upload videos that display for all of the feed, story, and right column placements. Sometimes you can actually do the crop within Facebook, but usually I just make another version. So I'd go to change, and then we already uploaded the story version. So you see we left just enough space for that call to action at the button. That's why you don't want text at the very, very bottom. And it will populate these to the 16 different placements. And you can actually change the thumbnail for the entire group at once. And sometimes you can even create your own images to do as the thumbnail. Sometimes you can even do a photo that's performed really well. I am going to grab a new primary text. Learned by over 10,000. I've left a 5-star review. I'll just finish up the text. Let's do free shipping for this one, for the headline. And then, yeah, we can leave it as gluten-free. I'm just going to change this headline while we're here. So this is Creative Video 01, Waffles Falling In. That'll be CRV 01. And then I believe it's headline 2. And then I definitely think it is worth going through each placement, just making sure everything looks correct, plays correctly, and is displayed correctly. So I'll just go through each placement really quickly. The right column needs to be an image, so you can either leave that and it won't show, or sometimes I'll even just pick one of our top performing and change it out for that. You'll need to, yeah, like that. I'm just gonna skip over the groups and go to stories. If you created captions, you can do like an SRT file and actually upload them, but we already have the text on our videos, which I think is a better way to do it. I'm gonna work on updating these other placements. So it takes a little while, but we have now customized all 16 placements, made sure that they all look great. We'll just look over it one more time. We already named it properly. All right, this one is done. I'm gonna make sure it's saved it to the draft and I'll hit close. So I'm going to duplicate this ad into the new campaign and repeat the exact same steps again. Okay, so now I'll go through the same process. All of these look good. I'll swap out some of the primary text, the headline, description, make sure the website URL, and then rename everything. I think you get the picture. All right, so this is the total we're gonna test in this ad set. So it's gonna take the campaign budget and spread it across the ad sets and then spread it across these 4 ads at the fitness and wellness and weight loss market. So this ad set is done and we wanna get it done before we duplicate it and show it to a different audience. And since we wanna test this audience versus the other one, I think it makes total sense to do an exact duplicate and leave everything else the same. We don't even have to name the new ads anything different. We just need to name this something else. I will just do another interest. So I'm gonna select the next couple of audiences with you. So let's say waffle is one interest. So Waffle House is actually an employer. which I don't know if it would be that helpful. A Belgian waffle. You can target like a specific page like Eggo or things like that. You could also think of a competitor. So even something like RX bar is like kind of a healthy bar, or Larabar. Even though they're not direct competitors, it's kind of like a healthy take on a certain thing. So that actually could be a decent interest. So that'd be, okay, 1.4 million people. So you could do that and one other things, kind of do like fitness bars, protein bars, things like that. So those are some other things to target. We'll just do Larabar for this. So everything else is the same, but we will want to do, like, name it protein bar, and then interest 02. So we just change the name on that. Otherwise, we can leave it the same. Then I'm going to duplicate. So we can say, let's do 3 interests that we're targeting. You can just do a direct duplicate. So I'm going to look through the different yoga options and pick one that's kind of the audience size that I'm looking for and seems like a really good fit. So I do want to show you, you can change the name of campaigns, ad sets, or ads in this setup screen, as well as when you're setting up the ad initially. So I'm going to hit yoga and then click save to draft. So I think 3 is a good number for what we're testing. So this campaign is done. So we have cold based off interest, lowest cost, CBO. Then under it, we've got our 3 audiences, and we're going to show them the same ad so we can kind of see how those ads are performing. So the first campaign is done, and we're about to jump into the second one. Really quickly, I want to show you how you can use existing posts to keep all of the likes and comments in the future. After the campaigns you launched today have been running a while, you want to take the top performing ads and launch them to new audiences, but with all the likes and comments saved. So this is going to be how you're going to do it. So what you're going to do is do use existing post. And then down below, you'll have the option to select a post. So you've got a couple of options. If you do select post, you'll actually see the different ones, and you can select it directly or search for it or anything like that. But if you know a very specific ad, you can actually just go directly to that ad. So, okay, this is the one. It's got 42 likes on it. I want to keep all of those. So I can do see post, Facebook post with comments. And sometimes you can grab it directly from there. Sometimes it's kind of weird and has like ad and stuff like that. So what you can do is actually go to embed. And right there, it'll give you the exact post number. So now, you know, I'm using the existing post. When I click submit, I'm actually able to use that old, it can be an old ad or it can be an old post. You do have to keep everything the same, like the headline and things like that, but you do get to keep all of these. And if you take this ad, the one that's using the existing post, and duplicate that, then that new ad is going to keep every single comment and like and things like that. So you can actually keep an ad rolling out to more and more people. Some of them have like 3,000 comments or something crazy, and it's just a big, awesome conversation. So that's definitely highly recommended. So we'll need that skill in the future, but let's continue the tutorial and set up our second campaign. We're going to do one more cold audience, so let's duplicate at the campaign level. Make one copy. And most is going to be the same, but I'm going to do broad. So I'm going to do a really large audience and see how it performs for everyone who could be interested in waffles, which is just about everyone. Everything else stays the same. Okay, so I'm going to go into this, and sometimes when it's in draft, it's kind of annoying. It shows some of the additional like ad sets, but these are the 3 that are selected, and these 2 I can just delete. You want to make sure you're deleting the right ones. So So this is where you can like edit or duplicate, but if you choose those duplicates, we want to delete them because this campaign is just going to have the one. All right, so everything else will be the same, except instead of protein bar, interest 1, I'm just going to do broad. 18 to 65, save to draft. Then I'll go in and edit. And okay, we have Larabar interest. I'm going to get rid of that and just show it to everyone, 220 million people. If you find it easier, you can just create a new campaign, but I'm doing it this way because then I can just use these 4 same ads again. Let's go in. So I'll just leave the ads the same. And now this one's ready to go. That was pretty quick. All right, so now we have both cold audiences done. This one's got 3 ad sets, 3 audiences, and this one just has the 1 broad audience. So it's up to you how you want to set it up. You know, we could have easily done 4 audiences here. We could have easily done 3 and 3, but I am trying to give some spend to those ads just so I can kind of see what headlines and ads and copy works. So we have both the cold audiences set. Okay, so now we're gonna do a new campaign. Sometimes I do separate campaigns, one for warm audiences and one for hot audiences. And how I define that is warm, I kind of think of as, hey, maybe they visited the Facebook page one time, maybe they followed you on Instagram or things like that. But a hot audience is like, hey, this person visited the checkout page. They went to go check out. They almost made it to the end, or they visited a sales page, even like the home page. I would usually include in that. So for simplicity, I am going to do them in one campaign, but I'll probably do this one at ABO so I have a little more control of where that spend is going. So here is what we are going to set up. I'll often do warm and hot traffic separately, often for a much bigger campaign, but in this example, we have 3 hot audiences. And what that means is it's people who actually visited the website. Sometimes it can be even they initiated checkout or got really close to buying. On this one, they visited a very specific product page, which is a really popular product. So we want to get people back to that product page. And then this is high intent, means that they spent a lot of time on the website. So as we show our original ads to more and more new people, it's going to be adding to people who have engaged with us on Facebook or Instagram or watched a video or visited the different pages. So we're just going to do these 2. So that's the overview, and then we're going to set this up in Facebook. We have one ad that is the same as last time, but we're going to show 3 different ads. That way, when we're showing ads to new people, once they get added to these retargeting audiences, they're actually going to see fresh new videos, and these videos and photos and things like that are a little more geared toward getting people to finish checkout, or a little bit more for people who are already at least a little bit familiar with the product. And yeah, we're going to do the same 4 ads across these. This peanut butter page is a little bit more specific. Okay, so everything else is going to be the same, except for I'm not going to check CBO because I'm kind of going to look at the different audience sizes and base the spend based off that. So, you know, if one audience has 1,000 people, I'll maybe put a couple dollars a day. This will happen somewhat automatically, but I just like that additional control, especially if I'm doing like add to cart. Let me quickly punch in the name of this campaign. All right, so we're going to do warm/hot, website and social, the date, ABO, website conversion. When you're testing like CBO versus ABO, just know like warm and hot traffic is definitely going to be a lot more profitable. So you don't want to say, oh, ABO works much better, but you only did it for warm and hot traffic who'd already heard of you. Okay, so we can go to next. I'm going to turn off detailed targeting expansion. I generally don't do that for warm and hot audiences. So daily budget, we can just leave that at $20 or somewhere around that. We're actually going to set each ad set budget later on after we duplicate all of them. Okay, so the first audience I'm going to create is people who spent a lot of time on the website and have visited in the last 30 days. So that'll be any website page. So I'm going to go to website. And then you want to make sure you choose the correct pixel. So you have a number of options. You can target specific pages. We're going to do by the amount of time they spent on the website. So this will be people who are in the top 25%. So the quarter of people who spend the most time on our website. And then we'll do, in the last 30 days. And then I'm going to name it. So you name the audience, which is different than naming the ad set. You're naming the audience so you can select this audience at any point in the future. So we'll do high intent, 30-day, all visitors, since it's not a specific page. So we'll create that audience, and then anytime we want to use that in the future, you can go to all of your saved audience will show up, and you can select that again. Okay, so I named this high intent, 30-day, all pages, US 18 to 65, auto placement, auto bid. I'm going to speed up the footage of myself setting up these ads, but you can go to the timecode down below if you would still find the step-by-step instructions helpful. Okay, so now we have the high intent. We have all of our ads in there. So now we're ready to duplicate this audience several times to show these 4 ads to different people. Okay, so this audience is going to be 31 to 180 days. So we're going to see, the reason I sometimes do it like that is typically the 31 to 80 day is profitable, not quite as profitable as the 30 day. But you can really see how well that audience does and if it's actually worth showing things to people all the way up to 180 days, or if you just want to stick with something like 30. So we're going to remove that audience. We're going to create a new one. We'll do it the same way as before. So website. I don't want it to actually overlap with the other audience. And I would use this if it was a website with pretty high traffic. If you have a lot less traffic, you'll probably want to do like all website visitors. So we'll do visitors by time spent, top 25% in the past 180 days. And then we want to exclude people who have visited in the last 30 days. So we'll click exclude. Visitors by time spent in the last 30 days. So it'll be 31 to 180. So I'll name this audience so we can reference it later. High intent, 31 to 180 day, all website pages. Okay, create audience. Click done. Duplicate this again. So I'm going to name this one peanut butter, since these ads are specifically on the peanut butter page. So we'll create a custom audience for this as well. Go to create new, custom audience, website again. So for this one, it's people who visited a very specific page. So make sure the right pixel is selected, and then switch this to people who visited a specific page. You can also do like an event, like people who added to cart or things like that. But for this one, the URL contains peanut butter. So any pages that contain peanut butter, for this one is just the one sales page. And then generally I'll do the full 180 days, the max if it's like a very specific page, because traffic for that is going to be lower. And just name this peanut butter page 180 days. Okay, so this peanut butter one, it's not going to show all 4 ads, and we'll actually need to edit these various ads. So we don't want to show all 4. We're just going to want to show these 2. So from this campaign, we're actually going to want to delete the 2 we're not going to use. We could just delete it right here. Make sure you select the right ones. Delete them. All right, go to edit. So for this, we're actually going to keep the photo and stuff the same, but switch it to more peanut butter specific ones. So this is people who landed on the page. So, you know, you were so close to tasting our delicious waffles. So we'll change it to that because this is only going to target people who actually went to that page to potentially buy it, but didn't actually go through with it. And then for the URL, we want to actually make sure that this one goes toward peanut butter. So it will send them, when they click on the link, it will go to peanut butter. And rather than learn more, I'll definitely do shop now. So then I'll just change the title. We use different primary text. All right, now that one's good to go. I'm gonna do the exact same steps for this one, making it specific to the peanut butter. Again, I'm going to go through the same steps we've been going through, setting up the ads and editing the placements. Okay, so I switched out the title. These 2 are good to go. So this audience ad set is set for the peanut butter. So I don't want to duplicate the peanut butter because that is specific to the page, but I can duplicate this one because the next audience is going to have the same ads. So these are our 3 hot audiences, people who visited specific pages or spent a lot of time on the website. We can just duplicate the full campaign. So I'll delete this audience here and I'll create a new one. So I'm going to do video views, and what I find works really well for this, you know, the views may be not enough to retarget people if it is videos you haven't like boosted or shown to a large audience. But what you can do is you run like a video ad to your cold traffic to new people, and then you put one of those videos in here so that as you spend tons and tons of money on that cold traffic, you're building up a ton of views, basically moving those people who watch a lot of the video from the cold audience into your retargeting, into your hot audience. So I generally do anywhere between 50 and 90%. I'll often do 365 days. It's up to you. That's the max. And then you can actually choose the specific videos, either Facebook videos or Instagram videos. So you can choose the exact Facebook page and select the exact video, and anyone who's watched half of the video, it'll add to this audience. But that's also true going forward. So if you have a video that a lot of people are seeing going forward, you're going to be adding more and more people to this audience. I will go to Instagram page. Is Instagram business profile. You can also find the exact video ID or campaign. So it will tell you the 3-second video views. So it would be less than this, hitting 50%. So if it's 121, you know, it may be like 30 people who have watched it. But you can go through, you can select all your videos. You can select videos on a specific topic or ones you're currently running as an ad and create an audience basically based off of that. So we could click confirm. Then we just want to name this audience. So we can do Instagram training videos, 365 day, 50% view. So for the potential reach, it's not uncommon for this to say that it's unavailable or just something vague like it's under 1,000 or saying it may get very little results. But you should kind of figure out how big that audience size is yourself. Like you should have Google Analytics on your site or some way to track how many people visit each page. So you kind of know, hey, this page got 1,000 visits in the last week. So our audience size is going to be somewhere around the 1,000 range, and you can set your budget accordingly. So don't worry if it's giving you some sort of error, as long as you have an audience that you know has at least a couple hundred people, you're good to go. And you know, if it's an amazing audience who's really likely to buy, it's worth advertising to them, even if there's only 300 people in that audience. If it's people who actually almost checked out, you know, it's definitely worth spending a couple dollars a day to get in front of all those people again who came really, really close to buying. Okay, so I'm going to rename this to Video View 50%. And then we did 365 day. Everything else stays the same, so that one is ready. Going to duplicate this now, create the one for Instagram. So those were video views. They were video views off Instagram, but it's different than just people who generally engaged with the channel. So I'm going to create a new custom audience. Go to Instagram account. Then select the right account. And unless you have a huge audience, I usually just leave this as everyone who engaged with it. That kind of includes people who sent messages or things like that. If you have a really big audience, you could do like 30 days or 60 days. You know, I just have a couple thousand subscribers, so I think 365 days is going to work really well. So I'll just call it Instagram engagement 365 days and create that audience. And then I'll just change this to Instagram engagement. Then delete the copy. Everything else is the same. Duplicate the Instagram one. The final one we're going to do is another warm audience. It's people who engage with us on Facebook. So I'll delete this audience. So I'm going to go to create new custom audience. Now we'll do Facebook page. This is pretty much the same as Instagram page. So this is kind of the blanket term for people who have interacted in any way. And unless you have a huge audience, you'll probably just leave it as that. So you can see it includes people who have visited your page or taken an action on a post or ad, such as reactions, shares, comment, link click, anything like that. Okay, so I'll leave this as 365 days. You know, I just have under 1,000, so I will call this Facebook engagement 365 days. I'd call it something slightly different if it was just like people who sent a message or some of the other ones. This would be specific to ads, not just your regular one. And this can be like messages and things like that. So we'll create this audience and we'll be able to use these at any point in the future. Okay, and this will stay the same. Facebook engagement, 365 days. So I have these 6 audiences targeting people who have watched specific videos or engaged in Facebook or visited certain pages. Now I want to select the budget. So I am doing ABO just because these are really small audiences, and I kind of just want to get in front of everyone in the audience a few times per week. You know, if you're hitting people with ads 20 times a week, the results can really go down. So the reason I'm not using CBO is, let's say one of these audiences is very, very small and I can just spend $1 or $2 a day to get in front of people. I wouldn't want it kind of diverting a lot of money to that if it's doing well, but burning out that audience. So let me show you how to access the audiences that we created. You can just go to Business Home and then go to Audiences. Here we have all the audiences we created. Even going back a ways, we can actually edit them while we're here, go into them. And these are so recent that it's still pending. But, you know, often for these really smaller audiences, it'll just say below 1,000, which isn't incredibly helpful. So let me go back to the ad account. I usually can do some calculations myself to give me a good idea of what the spending should be. So those audience sizes are just an estimate. I've definitely had audiences that have over 5,000 people where it's still said the estimate's below 1,000. So I'm just going to set the budget kind of based off wanting to get in front of everyone in this audience, you know, maybe 2 to 5 times per week. If you show it to people too many times, they may get kind of burned out and your results will go down. But, you know, these are the best possible people to show it to, and you want them to see your different ads when it's fairly recent in their minds or things like that. So this is all an estimate, and you don't have to get the small audiences just right, but I did make this little cheat sheet that should be helpful. This is generally the range I'm finding in my ad account. So cost for 1,000 impressions costing $7 to $22. So to reach each person in that audience around once, we're looking at spending $1 to $3 per day. So if you had an audience of 300 people and you wanted to reach them around 3 times per week, you'd look to spend $1 to $3 a day. If the audience is more like 1,000, you spend 3 times that much, aiming for 3,000 impressions, and $3 to $9 in spend per day. Now, if you have an absolutely huge audience, like let's say 250,000 Instagram followers, you probably wouldn't try to reach that entire audience every single week, but you may look at hitting, you know, something like 50,000 impressions, spending somewhere around $50 or $100 a day if that's an amazing audience and it's generating a lot of sales. This isn't a precise thing. It's not like if you have an audience of 1,000 and get 3,000 impressions, every single person will have seen it exactly 3 times. But generally, just about everyone in the audience will have seen it and likely seen it multiple times. You also want to consider when we're showing ads to cold traffic, we are adding a lot of website visitors or video views or people who have interacted with us to these warm and hot audiences. So this is also a ballpark that if we're spending $100 a day on those cold audience ads, we'd be adding 200 website visitors. The amount you pay for link clicks really varies. I've seen it as low as 15 cents all the way up to close to $2. It'll depend on your ads, industry, when you're running it, all things like that. I'm also estimating if we spend $100 in ads and half of our budget is going toward videos, we generate an additional 1,000 people who viewed 50%. And then with Instagram engagement, it tends to be around the range of link clicks. So with this first audience, we're going to say it's 1,000 people, but we'll be adding an additional 2,000. So we're looking at 3,000 people. I want to reach each person. We'll say around 3,000 times. So we're looking around the range of 10,000 impressions. So I'll do on the lower end of the range and check frequency. I'm just going to set this at 12. I'm also going to add frequency to my column so I can see on average how many times people in this audience have seen the ad. So I will check this every single day and I'll adjust the budget if the frequency is too low or too high. And I'm going to estimate the other audiences. I'm also planning on keeping it around $75 per day in total, so I'm going to factor that in as well. We have everything set and ready to go. We're going to be spending around $220 a day over the next week or two. Often I'll go through the different campaigns and just double check my work one more time, and then you can go to review and publish. And once you hit publish, it will send all your ads to Facebook, where they'll either be approved or disapproved. And once they're approved, your campaigns will be live and it will be spending money. Very briefly, I do want to cover the learning phase. So when you launch new ads, it will say learning. So it's learning who to show it to, how to optimize for conversions. And then generally within a few days, sometimes a week, it will move to either learning limited or active. So for learning limited, it'll say this ad set is not generating enough purchases to exit the learning phase. This usually occurs when your ad set is limited by cost control, budget, audience size, other settings, or things like that. So a general rule of thumb is if you're generating at least 50 results per ad set in a week, it should get out of the learning phase. Based off personal experience, I think people put a little too much weight in the learning phase. Like certainly for ad sets that are generating a lot of purchases and getting better and better at finding the right people, I have seen better results. However, sometimes it will move to learning limited or active within like an hour or something crazy like that. Some of my all-time top performing ads are learning limited, or I'll have ads that say active that are underperforming. So really, I think the most important thing is you're trying to generate a decent amount of sales so it can get better and better at optimizing for that. We have that launched and ready to go. Now we need our ads to be approved by Facebook. Okay, so here is what we're going to do next. I'm going to keep track of the different ads, the different campaigns, and how many purchases they are bringing in. I'm not going to be too worried, especially after like one day. And I'm not going to be worried about an ad that hasn't spent the amount I'd like to get a customer for. So if it spent $40 and hasn't generated a sale, but I'm fine with 50, I'm not going to worry until it hits 50 and a little bit over, and then I'll think about pausing it. But I usually let it run at least a couple days so I have a good indicator, and then several days later you can think about pausing different ads and different ad sets that are performing really, really poorly. So then you can funnel more of the money into the winning ads. It'll do that somewhat automatically with like the CBO, but sometimes I do like to turn off ads that are just doing terrible. And I want to be, during this time, I want to be creating new ads and kind of learning from what's working and trying to roll out new ads and new creative. I'm always spending at least 10% on testing new ads, but if things really aren't working well, it could be like 50%, 60%, 80%. At what point would I be nervous? Well, if it's been like $300 in spend and I've got like 0 purchases, I'm going to think about pausing it or kind of going back to the drawing board or things like that. Or if we spent $1,000 and generated $100 of purchases, that's really bad. You know, if we spend $1,500 and we've generated $950 in sales, that's a little disappointing, but still has some potential, and I'm going to try to keep bringing it to profitable. Now that you understand the full campaign setup, you'll want to go to that longer ads training because it covers copywriting, finding additional inspiration, and actually creating all of the ads.